Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's October 9th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And looking real quickly at the daily chart, what looked like was going to be a huge sell-off has turned into a nice positive rally day. So that's generally what happens on those gaps. The market will overreact. It gaps open way down here, leaves this big gap, and then the market rallies to fill that gap, and the rally picks up steam, and it closes higher than what you would have even expected. So we are really close to the midline now. We could turn back down here. We'll have to see, or we could rally out here. It wouldn't surprise me if we rally out of here. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, there's nothing really good to rally the market, in my opinion. I think this is probably um, just a bear market bounce, but we'll see. I could be wrong. I mean, it's really hard to know. We've clearly got two legs down here. We actually had a little more than a measured leg, but we've bounced back inside this range again, so we could just keep going. I mean, I don't know what to expect. This market's just kind of odd right now with the economy. There's nothing. I know they put out some fake good news about the economy, but we all know the economy's in the can. The war drums are beating all around the world, and we got all this stuff going on in the Middle East overnight. I mean, there's no reason for this market to be exuberantly rallying. I think this is just a recovery from the um, gap open and the maybe they got a little ahead of themselves by the gap open last night. But stuff like that makes the market nervous. So this market is very nervous. It could rally strongly or sell off just as strongly. So just be careful, be nimble, put your safety stops in place, put them where you're supposed to put them. Don't take any chances. And if you're wrong, take your hit. And if you're right, ride it as long as you can. And that's the best policy you can have. So anyway, closed very positive today. The other chart looks very similar. Started off kind of sideways really after the gap open, and but we rallied strongly this afternoon. So uh, doesn't look like we still got an hour before close, so we could sell off some or we could continue to go higher. It does look like we're turning down off the midline, or we found resistance at the midline here. So this thing could just sell on off from here. But anyway, let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart. We'll go through the trades. There's not a lot of them today. It was not a lot of setups today, but we'll go through the trades, and I want to try to wrap today up early. And I'm trying to do these things earlier. Seems like every time I say that, the next ones come out at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But I'm trying to get them done early, and I'm going to keep working towards that. So I'll do my best and get them out as early as I can. But some days I just can't help it, and they'll probably be a little later. But when I can, I'm going to try to get them out early. So let's flip over to the other chart. Okay, here's our 2000 tick chart. We started out in this range. I originally had this range at the highs here, but I adjusted. You can see we were kind of working off the highs and lows, so I adjusted it, and just a hair after we got these next couple of bounces here. Um, Early on, I did have it a little bit higher than this, but this looks to be correct. And you can see we actually bounced off of it a few times here before we rallied up again. And you can also see the measured move on the base of the width was pretty much spot on using this as the range highs. So, but there it is. We worked sideways a bit, failed out the bottom. Looked like we were going to fail out the top, but we got two legs back, which is a lot of times the center of the pattern, which would have given us a high here, but we far surpassed that, and looks like we're climbing again here very weakly, but it's after 3 o'clock, much less after 2:30. So this is probably just the market. People squaring up at the 3 o'clock before they get kicked out by their broker or whatever. But let's zoom in here and go through the trades. This won't take long today because there's not a lot of trades after about 10 o'clock. Early on, we were in this range. We had this green channel working up. We had an overshoot, lower high. Then we had a break. We tried to go higher twice, and you get a nice second entry short here. I probably would not enter that on the engulfing bar since it's above the EMA, but when this closes, if we get it's so bearish. If you get a break below that, it's a second entry. It really was a second entry short when it came past that green. And you might enter that on the engulfing bar. I'd probably wait just to make sure this closes bearish, and if it breaks below that, go with it, because we're probably headed to the back to the other side, or at least attempt to go back to the other side. We only end up going a little past the midline, and then we reverse. And um, you would expect them to try to fill that gap, so you're just waiting on a trend to start, and then you want to try to get on board with it. But right now, we're still sideways and looking like we're going lower here. It looks like we're still in the range, basically. Um, but we get the two-legged correction right there, which is another one you might look for the two measured legs as well. And you can see that one's somewhat accurate. Real close on that one. But you get your leg up, two-leg correction, another leg up, and then you got another larger, much larger two-leg correction. So then you'd measure the bigger leg and look for the bigger leg up. But anyway, nice short there early on. Then we bounce and we break out here. You would expect this to fail. I just don't see anything that would make me want to go short here. This one is very tempting. It's a little ways away from the EMA. It's breaking out of that congestion. I think you got to wait on a lower high there. It does close back near the range, so maybe you take that trade on the short, but I'd probably wait on a lower high just to be safe. And then you get a couple of bounces here, and then a higher low, and then another higher low. And this is basically a double bottom. You might argue, hey, there's two legs back here. Could you go long right there? Well, there's a little bit of stem. It closes below the EMA, but it's a breakout, and a lot of them fail, so it's a little risky going long already. You want to get something a little better. It does pretty much confirm the trend line there, but I'd want to see it touch it again just to be sure, and it does come back and confirm it here. There's another second entry long there, but the signal bar is no good. But then it comes back, and it gives you a second entry short failure and another second entry long. Notice this is a double bottom, so there's a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, and then you got a new high here, first entry, second entry, right off the key entry point, right off the EMA. The problem is on the second entry, the signal bar is not good enough. But if you see the failure there, that gives you a reason to enter one tick above that, and you can go long there. And I like that entry, being that it's right off the key entry point. We just tested it 3 times in a row. You run up here, then you get another first entry, second entry, but again, the signal bar is no good. Then you get a triple test, and you could call that a high or low. You could enter that on the engulfing bar when it went by. Just if you wait till it closes, I think you still have room to get out, but you're pressing it a little more. We did just make a measured move too, so that'd be another reason I might wait for this to close to make sure it's going to be bullish and you don't get trapped there. But it turns out to be a nice one. But I probably wouldn't be afraid to enter that on the engulfing bar, because a triple test right at the key entry point with no close outside of it yet, it's probably going to make another push higher. We run on, and as you see, it does make there's a little higher low here, but you can't go long right into that. I think you're pushing your luck there. And you see it doesn't go too much further before it sells off strongly. I don't see any reason to go short there. You get your break, tries to make a new low, and then we're heading up. But notice what happens here. You get another double bottom. It looks very similar to what we saw over here. And then you get a first entry and a second entry, and it fails and gives you a nice signal bar. You might take that one on the engulfing bar. Again, I'd probably wait till it closes. And you're expecting prices to make a new high here. That's what you're hoping for. I didn't draw the trend line because this is the retest, and I usually don't draw the trend line on the retest, but it's a retest of this blue channel over here. And it looked like we were going to run on up and make that new high, but it just doesn't happen. And then we just turn down. No chance of really getting short here. It's just a first entry here. That's so tempting because it's only like 6 ticks, but it closes on the upper side of the EMA. You could easily get 2 legs up and then get and then come down. So you just really can't take that. And then this looks real congested and choppy. But what you can't overlook is we tested that, what was resistance, as support, and it held 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and you easily got a triple test there. And this breaks lower first and turns up on a second entry. I like that one to go long. You don't know that it's going to take off like that, but you got to figure it's probably going to stay in the upper side and head back to the upper side of the range again. But this thing kind of just takes off. It's a pretty nice move up there, so that would have been a nice entry. There's no other real chance to enter it. Then we're going sideways. Then we drop out of there. It's dangerous to take that first low right there. But you're expecting a retest of this high at a minimum. But you're probably better off to wait on a higher low here. Personally, I wouldn't take this trade. It's one, though, these failed breakouts, you can see it turns out to be an important low. Would have made you a really good move, and they usually do. But you're taking a little bit of chance. But with more risk comes more reward, so it depends on the kind of day you're having, maybe the kind of week you're having, how your trading is overall. If you can afford to take a small loss, because it's only like 4 ticks, so it's very low risk. So if you can afford to take a 5 or 6 tick hit, by all means, take some of these, because if you're expecting prices to go higher, because these often turn out to be important lows if they break out the low side. If it breaks out the high side and fails, it often makes important highs. And you can see that was an important low, and off it went again. So it looks like it's pretty close to 2 measured legs there. And it basically 2 measured legs on the money. And that would have been your first target. And then you see you get a big correction here. I don't see anything that makes me want to go short there. And then you bounce off down here and pretty much confirm this trend line. Comes back, confirms it again. Unfortunately, this is not a higher low. Then you get a failure here, but I don't really like this one. It looks really congested. Actually, this is just a higher low because you made a new low here. The failure's here. But I don't like this one just because it looks real congested. It's a higher low, but you can see that resistance across there, and we're back inside it. But it finally pushes out and pulls back and gives you a failure. Although it's not a perfect failure setup, it is a failure. So it would be a continuation pattern here to go higher. And so maybe you take that one. Your stop goes below this. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Your stop would go below this bar, but your entry where the failure occurs is 1 tick above this greenish bar. So your buy stop would be right above that. But you have to put your safety stop at the swing low, so it goes down here. And this thing just takes off. You don't know that it's going to do that, but hey, the trend line's still holding. The trend is still in play, and off it goes. I don't see anything else. There's a second entry long here, and by this time it's obvious this is a very strong trend. You don't really know where the highs are up here, but you could guess with your midline. That's what I did here. And this thing just bounces off that trend line and just keeps going higher. So maybe you enter, I made it green, maybe you enter there. You need to really know what you're doing. And it just keeps heading higher till it hits the high, and then it kind of turns, starts working lower. I don't see any shorts here that I like. And then suddenly you got a break and a new low. It's tempting to go long there off that midline, but again, I think you need a higher low or something, and you just don't get it. It just takes off. Here you're just getting congested. There's the break. You know you're probably going to make a new high, but there's no setup there I'd be willing to take to risk it. And it does run up, make a new high, and it comes down, and you get a first entry, second entry, and a fairly bearish bar. It looks a little sideways. It's still slightly above the EMA, but you're expecting prices to go lower. There's plenty of room back to the lows in the EMA here, or the midline here. So maybe you take it. if you don't take this one, by the time it gets over here, this is really tempting because you kind of have a triple test there. But look how congested that is, and everything's still closing above the EMA. I wouldn't risk that. Turns out to be a nice trade, but you just can't risk it. Then we're just chopping sideways once again into the 230 hour there. So um, just nothing I see I'd want to risk. You can't go long there yet, and there's no shorts I like. So it just got real slow, and then, even though we had some good movement right in here, there's not a lot of real straightforward trades. Most of those were early on. And then it's just, there's a few green ones in there, but really, after 10 o'clock, there's not much going on here. So even though it's a nice rally, there's just no setups. Once you're a more experienced trader and you recognize these strong trends like this, really you can almost trade any signal bar off the key entry point that qualifies and do okay. And there would have been one right here. You could have taken that trade and you see it would have been a winner. Of course, I marked this one already, but that's the only two you got. So that was really, you just can't enter above these bars. Yeah, maybe they're going to go to the other side before they turn down, but a lot of times you'll enter right here and it'll turn straight down. And you can see how far we are away from the EMA. The further you get away and the longer you've been away from the EMA, the more dangerous it is entering, because the more opportunity you got that it's going to snap back to that EMA. That EMA works like a magnet when you're above or below it, and when you reach it, it repels like a magnet. It pulls when you get away from it, and it pushes when you get to it. And if you remember that, so that's why we wait for these movements, these pullbacks to come back to it, because we know it's going to push it off again. And when we get way far away, we know that we don't want to enter away, because it's about time it's going to snap and pull it back again. And so you have to be real careful, and you have to remember how that EMA acts. It's like a magnet, and it pulls when things are away from it, and when they touch, it repels them. And whenever you see prices flipping back and forth above and below like that, then you're sideways. You can really trade that both ways. And then suddenly you're mostly below and it's downhill again. Now you're mostly above, so it's uphill again. And that's how that stuff works. So, okay, well, there it is. Like I said, it's kind of just not much happening this afternoon. It just weren't a lot of chances to enter unless you really understand. And I know what'll happen. A lot of new traders that are new to this will start trying to trade this, and they'll get burned, and they'll say, well, that don't work. Well, you need to really know what you're doing and be able to read the chart and see the entire context. And so this is for experienced traders to try to buy these kind of trends. Otherwise, stay away from them, because you'll get burned. Just like right here, notice how it's running up real fast, and let me zoom in a little bit here. And then suddenly it actually goes sideways first, then sells off. But somebody tries to buy in there, not understanding, not being a real good chart reader, and they get burned only to see it go exactly where they thought it would go. So most of you are better to follow the basic rules of waiting for it to come back to the EMA, just like I talked about, because then it'll repel it and you try to get a setup and get back on going away from the trend with it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.